Ohio unmasked, and gimmick or not, Vax-A-Million seems to be working. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio, Bob Clegg, Republican strategist, and Karen Kasler, Statehouse Bureau Chief for Ohio Public Radio and TV. It may take a while to get used to, but the masks are coming off. The CD says it's okay for vaccinated people to shed their masks, even indoors. The state of Ohio has, for all intents and purposes, lifted its mask mandate 2 weeks before it was set to expire anyway. The state has ended inspectors' spot checks of businesses to see if workers and customers were wearing masks.
We see no reason to have this group out because it's going to be impossible. It's going to be impossible for them to determine who's vaccinated and who is not vaccinated. And that's the problem that businesses face.
And businesses, at least major retailers, are making masks optional. Kroger, Giant Eagle, Target, and many others say only unvaccinated people have to wear masks, but they're not going to check. Sam Gresham, you've been pretty anxious about COVID during this whole time, pretty concerned with the spread and how it affects your family and others. How eager are you to see folks without masks?
I think it's a trust issue. There have been so many anti-vaxxers, anti-mask people. I'm wondering if the people are going to tell me the truth. Are they going to set people up to get infected? That's my concern. The other thing, too, the governor said he was going to stick to the science. And he said when the rate got to 50 to 100,000, he was going to change. Well, it's still above 100 and some thousand. So I hope he's not being premature. I also think it requires a lot of people to rethink things. And a lot of people I talk to are not taking that mask off for a while, even when they go into places. Because again, it's a trust factor. Who else in the room is infected or not? Yeah. So I hope the governor didn't become premature, and I'm looking forward to it. I now walk outside. So I think it's good, but I hope it doesn't have a backlash on everybody.
Bob Clegg, if you are not vaccinated and you're just as prone to spreading the disease as you were 6 months ago when it was going through the roof, and that's why they want you to wear a mask. So given that, and only half of the state is now vaccinated, is it wise to go with the honor system? Bob.
Well, I think it's just a matter of people, figuring out. It's the people that aren't vaccinated that are the ones that are at most risk. People that are vaccinated, are going to be fine. So, I mean, and Sam was talking about, I hope the governor didn't do this too prematurely. Well, he's following what the federal, guidelines are. The CDC and other groups like that have already said that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. So why wear it? I think.
Karen Kasler, I'll wait for Bob's Wi-Fi to catch up. This really puts the burden on businesses. I think most businesses are following those CDC guidelines that Bob was talking about, and they're not requiring their employees that are vaccinated or their customers who are vaccinated to wear a mask, but it still is an honor system.
Well, and I think there was some reluctance even in the beginning to have employees and customers all wear masks. You might recall about a year ago, DeWine had put in a mask mandate for about a day and then took it off the next day because there had been calls from businesses wondering how they would enforce such a thing on their customers. And so the mask mandate was in place for employees. And I think there are a lot of employees who still are planning on doing that, and a lot of businesses who are saying that they want to go ahead and do it, because right now you have 44% of Ohio's total population, which includes people who are not eligible to be vaccinated, but 44% of the population that has started the vaccine process. That's 5.1 million people. That's still not even to the halfway point. And so I think that there's a lot of trepidation here. And I know I talked to Ohio State's infectious disease Institute's director, Michael Oglesby, for our TV show, The State of Ohio, this week, and asked him specifically about how fast it seems like we came to this point. It's taken us a year to get here, of course, but the CDC went from really telling people, hang on just a little while longer at the end of March, to all of a sudden, you can go ahead and stop wearing masks. And for some people, that kind of whiplash moment has been a hard thing to absorb. And I think it's we need a little bit of time maybe for some of us to really figure out where we are in this process.
Yeah, I think the science they're showing that CDC is basing its recommendation on the fact that there is now data that shows that if you have the vaccine, you're at very low risk of spreading it to other people, at least in serious amounts that would cause hospitalization. Bob Clegg, what do you think about, does this show the need for a vaccine badge or some kind of, they use the word passport, but some kind of app on your phone where you say, yeah, I'm vaccinated. So a store can say, are you really vaccinated? You show them your phone, you're good to go. You don't have to put the mask on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I actually took a picture of my card. So I have a picture showing that I was, vaccinated twice. So I'm, if I go into a situation where I have to prove it, I'm just going to pull that out. I think, nobody really wants to go down that road of, vaccination passports or vaccination proof. It can get dicey, I think. And a lot of businesses especially don't like the idea of policing this kind of thing. And I think they can view this as potential problems down the road with certain individuals. So that's why I don't see, and I don't even see a lot of the blue states who have been really hardcore about that. I don't even seen any of them suggesting that they do that kind of a program.
No, it's really, other countries have had it, but no, not really in the U.S. at all. Sam, is it going to be, it was hard to get used to wearing masks. Is it going to be hard, even when a lot of people are vaccinated? 75, 80% of us have the vaccine maybe. It's going to be hard to shed those masks. Right?
I think it is because of the trust factor. You don't know who is fully vaccinated or who is not. And what Bob said right there is going to be an issue. Somebody is going to have to give me personal assurance that everybody in the room has some level of vaccination, or they're wearing a mask. They have a white hat on or a black hat, or I'm not coming. Now, that's the real truth. If I can't be assured that I have a reasonable level of perception, and I think those are the people who are going to come last until they have some system where they can do that.
Yeah, all right. Week one of the Vax-A-Million drawing. Now, don't call it a lottery and don't call it a sweepstakes. The Vax-A-Million drawing is drawing a lot of interest. On the first day, the entry site went live. It drew 25 million visits. Look at that logo. Doesn't it look fun? State officials say more than 1 million people have registered for a chance to win those $1 million, 5 of those $1 million prizes. And health officials credit the drawing for a slight jump in adults getting the vaccine. Karen Kasler, the vaccine rate was not looking good for a while, but the past week or so it's ticked up a bit. How much credit can we give Vax-A-Million for that uptick?
Well, I think you can give a fair amount of credit. I mean, the Ohio Department of Health is certainly taking some credit, even though the same week that increase was reported, that was also the first week that kids from 12 to 16 could get their vaccine. So that's something to at least notice here. But the national attention that this got, I think, really got people talking. I mean, it was not long after Ohio made its announcement, maybe a week after, that you saw Maryland do something similar and New York do something similar, which is interesting because Ohio is the only red state that apparently is doing this. I mean, Maryland is run by a red governor, but is a blue state. New York, of course, is a blue state, but it's interesting that they've had better vaccination rates in blue states, but yet they decided to go this route. And so I think that it's the kind of thing that gets people talking. And my Statehouse News Bureau colleague, Andy Chow, tried to talk to some experts in behavioral science about whether this actually does incentivize people. And the conclusion is that, yeah, there are people who are going to get this vaccine now that might not have considered it before because of this fantasy opportunity to win $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, Say it's a 1 in a million chance, assuming that 5 million people are vaccinated, all of them enter. There's 5 drawings, 1 in a million chance of winning. So it's not good, but it's like anything else. It generates buzz, it generates excitement, and this is aimed at folks who were on the fence but not anti-vaccine. They were like lazy procrastinators, kept putting it off. That's what they're aiming this at.
It has a better odds than the lottery, though. It has better odds than the super lottery. So if you have a chance, it's this lottery and the size of people who are really competing with it. And it has a prerequisite. You just can't go buy a ticket. You have to have proof of being vaccinated. I think that's a good encouragement. I know that people are going to say, nah, that's not a good idea. Whatever it takes to get a needle in your arm. Yeah. It's all right with me.
Bob Clegg, they did change the rules. When the governor first announced this, he said basically everyone would be entered. They were going to use the voter rolls and maybe have an alternate entry site, and then they check later, I guess, if you were vaccinated. But now you have to enter to win. Does that make more sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to opt in. You got to take the responsibility and the due diligence to do it yourself. And you know what? I agree with Sam on this one. Whatever it takes to get people to do this, let's do it. And it seems like this is working. So let's go ahead with it.
Karen, half in jest, is there any talk about if this is successful, using it for other things like sweepstakes to get the flu shot, a sweepstakes to lose 20 pounds to help fight the obesity epidemic? What do you think?
I mean, I think the opportunities here are really interesting because certainly it does present this whole concept of if you incentivize people to do something you want them to do, and in this case, something that science has shown us is good for your health because it will prevent you from getting COVID and going into the hospital. You could still get it, but you'll get a lot less sick. Well, who knows where this might end up? And I think it's interesting that other states have picked up on this. But, there are still a lot of people who have questions, still a lot of people wondering exactly how all this works. But the longer that those people wait, the less likely it is that they could win this, because the people who got vaccinated first, who can register, and the deadline to register is Sunday, the drawing is Monday, the winner is announced on Wednesday, those people are in that first drawing, which is going to be the smallest pool of people potentially. So it's kind of an incentive to have been vaccinated early. The one thing that bothers me a little bit here, though, is the more people talk about this and the more people who get vaccinated, the more people who get into the pool to win this money, the lower the odds for everybody winning. Right. So there is that little moment there, that little point.
I'm curious what happens after week 1, because correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, you have the deadline is Sunday for this week, but then you can enter the next week. So you're watching TV on Wednesday night, because all the TV stations are going to carry this thing live. You're going to see the winner. It's probably a good story, hopefully, and then you're going to, well, geez, I'm going to get the vaccine. So week 2 will be the judge at how much the excitement is generating on this.
Oh, I think so. And one of the things that is inherent in the registration is that the Ohio Lottery can then use your likeness and your name to kind of advertise this. They can use you on billboards. You can kind of get a little state modeling contract out of this. So I think it will be something to watch to see what happens in the second week going forward after this first winner's announced, this first Vax-A-Millionaire.
Yeah, we joked on our podcast this week that people we wanted to see win the Vax-A-Million, and my pick was I wanted to see Josh Mandel win the Vax-A-Million sweepstakes. So we'll see. Anyway, if entering a sweepstakes, go ahead.
And remember, it's the shottery. That's what we've been calling it around here. It's the vaccine lottery, the shottery.
It really is Willy Wonka-esque. Anyway, if entering a sweepstakes by getting a life-saving vaccine wasn't exciting enough, Ohioans may soon be able to bet on the Bengals legally. A new gambling bill is working its way through the legislature. It's a little complicated, but the bill is still being tweaked. But basically, the state will issue dozens of licenses to establishments to take bets. Some will be to online sites. The licenses will cost $1 million for 3 years. Then the state would tax gambling at a rate of 10%. And the system would be run by the state's gambling commission, the casino commission, which oversees the state's casinos. Karen Kasler, we've talked, 21 states have legalized gambling since the Supreme Court ruled that states could do it, the states other than Nevada. How close is Ohio to doing this once and for all?
Well, the other part of that is that the Ohio Lottery does have a role to play here. They can run a sports betting pool. And that's been the sticking point, I think, in the legislature, is that there were some folks who wanted to see the Casino Control Commission control this. Some folks wanted to see the Ohio Lottery Commission control this. And there was also that split between allowing it just at casinos. And so only those communities that have casinos could really benefit versus having it at lottery retailers all around the state, where smaller communities get the opportunity to benefit. But also there's a worry that the larger you make this and the more prevalent you make this, could this become a problem for people who are prone to gambling? I mean, we all understand that sports gambling is going on right now. It's just a question of whether it's going to be legal or not. And every state around Ohio, other than Kentucky, has made it legal. And so we're close. Now, the sponsors say that we haven't, missed the boat here, and this can still work for Ohio. But working out those final details is really the important thing, and that's been the holdup all along.
The real money, Bob Clegg, is the online, on your phone, an app, and that's where the real money is coming on this gambling. You can sit and watch a baseball game or football game and bet on whether they run or pass on third down. Is it fair to have the casinos sort of running the show for most of this? At this point?
I mean, this has been, and Karen just detailed it, it's been a turf warfare here. So, I mean, that's what all this is about. Who's going to be in charge? Who can get the money? I think they got to resolve this because the state of Ohio needs this revenue. And I'd rather have them go this direction than trying to raise taxes. So I think it's going to have to be resolved. I think it will be resolved this session. And I think we will, in the end, have sports gambling here in Ohio.
Sam Gresham, moms always say, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. Does that hold true here? Should Ohio be the lone holdout if they don't think that this is a good idea to expand gambling because of the issues with problem gambling and addiction to gambling and people losing money? Could they be a lone wolf?
But these people are too greedy, Mike. They're not going to let that go. Look at the surrounding states and all the money that they're making. It's also going to create addicts. People who now do it illegally is going to do exactly what Bob said. They're going to be sitting watching television, going to flip an app over, and then they're going to bet. And it's probably going to result in them betting more often than they've done in the past. I look at FanDuel. I'm sure all of you are familiar with FanDuel. FanDuel is going to get some competition now, but I think the pool is still going to be larger in FanDuel in comparison to our lottery, because FanDuel is nationwide. So it's going to get some competition. We'll see. Yeah. But as the governor says, we can't let that money go to Indiana, Michigan. We just can't do that.
Yeah, and people are betting now illegally or using offshore gambling sites. Karen Kasler, the pro sports leagues, I think some of the pro sports leagues are partnering with these legal gambling sites. The question is the colleges. Some states have barred, major colleges from being able to bet on, like I think Rutgers in New Jersey. You can't bet on Rutgers football. Who would bet on Rutgers? I don't know. But anyway, will Ohio State be asked to be excluded from this big-time college football or basketball?
Yeah, and they've asked to. I mean, the colleges have asked if they could be excluded, but in my conversation with at least one of the sponsors, Senator Niraj Antani, he says, how do you exclude them? Because they are such a big part of what people would be gambling on. And so to try to come up with a way to deal with amateur sports that are still huge money makers and still take up a huge amount of the whole discussion about sports betting, that's an issue to be resolved here. But when you talk about the pro sports, the pro major league sports teams and their partnership in this, they had wanted the casinos to run this, and they're getting their way in a sense. And I know I was traveling fairly recently through Pennsylvania and saw big signs promoting the partnership between MGM and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's definitely a relationship going on here, which makes it just feel a little weird that this is the team I'm betting on and this is how they want me to bet. I think there's a lot of explanation that needs to happen for people who are new to this to really feel like they completely understand it.
Yeah, just think of the irony of the Cincinnati Reds with all the history of gambling and Pete Rose there, having its own betting service down right there at the Great American Ballpark. It could happen. It might very well might happen. Anyway, the dream of passenger rail service coming to Columbus has returned. Amtrak says it wants to restore service to Columbus by creating a link linking Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. Supporters say it is long overdue, and it will link Columbus to the national rail network and help the region's and nation's transportation system. Critics doubt Amtrak's ability to attract riders, and they worry about what state and local governments will have to pay to subsidize the system. Bob Clegg, if you were to bet, which would come first, legal sports betting or an Amtrak station in downtown Columbus? What do you think, Bob?
You froze.
I think he's frozen.
He's frozen.
I think.
All right, we'll ask Sam to make a bet. Sports betting or Amtrak? Bob apparently is frozen up.
Sports betting. Sports betting.
So why is it so hard to get rail service or get local support, City of Columbus support for passenger rail service in Columbus?
Because cars and people who make gasoline make it difficult for that to happen. It would be a great thing to me. I would go to D.C. I looked at the lines. They go to D.C., they go to Chicago, they go to Cleveland, they go to Pennsylvania, they even go all the way to New York. For me, it would be a good excursion for a weekend to go up by train, do a little shopping, come back by train. I don't have any weight restrictions on a train on how much my wife can bring back.
There you go. Bob, is that part of the problem? This has always been billed as the 3C connection, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, where people really want to go to Chicago or Washington, D.C. or New York City. Is that a better way to sell it than people, if they want to go to Cleveland, they're going to drive. I mean, it's only 2.5 hours. Is Bob with us? Karen, is that a discussion at the State House? Maybe we should sell this a different way besides just linking Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus?
I think the State House has been pretty clear, at least in recent memory, on how they feel about passenger rail service. I mean, John Kasich, when he became governor, turned down $400 million that was from the federal government to start this 3C and D corridor line. So, and especially when there was a discussion this week at the Columbus Metropolitan Club about this, and from Amtrak, the spokesperson there said it's going to take some state funding to get this going, that is part of what needs to happen. And the question is whether the state would be willing to do that funding. But to touch on something Sam just said, there's a perspective among people who like Amtrak and passenger rail that highways are being subsidized by the highway trust money that goes in, the federal money there. Airports and air travel are being subsidized by the federal money that goes there. Why not try to subsidize train travel as well?
Bob Clegg, let's try Bob Clegg again. We just got a press release from Sherrod Brown this week touting, hundreds of thousands of dollars to help Bolton Airfield and Pickaway County's airport. If there's money to help those places, shouldn't there be money for passenger rail as well?
Sure. I mean, and I worry about I worry about the local and state money that's going to have to go in this. So whatever federal money we can get, let's get it and let's do it.
But no, why not some little bit of state money? Because there is state money that goes into highways, and I remember one time I looked at the price tag for an intersection in Delaware County was double the amount of money that the state was going to have to pay for the last Amtrak service.
Yeah, but how many people are actually going to use the service?
You'd probably
That's
be
the
surprised.
question.
Yeah.
You'd probably be surprised how many people.
Well, especially since it won't be operational until 2035. What's going to be the demand for rail in 2035?
Yeah,
14 years from now.
Well, I think that's the ultimate high speed. The regular speed trains would be 20. They're looking at 2025, and then ramp up to what we have and on the East Coast and what Europe and Asia has. Sam, do we ever see the attitude changing in Columbus at the State House, do you think?
Yes, because the capitalists and the people who run industry are going to push this thing because we're going to need it. I mean, I like driving to Cleveland, Cincinnati, but man, or even Dayton, depending on what day and where you're going, the closer you get to those cities, the more the traffic is backed up. And in case you have an accident, it's even worse. But I like going to Cleveland, do a game, do a football game, don't have to worry about it, get on the train and come back. Yeah. I could just see myself doing that. Yeah, I'm getting older now, so trying to drive is a joke. So
right. We got to get to off the record comments, parting shots. Sam Gresham, will you go first?
I hope people keep their eyes on what's going on across the country with the terrorist alert. We have a lot of militia people here. Keep your eyes open.
All right, Bob Clegg, your final thought.
Gene Smith, the athletic director at The Ohio State University, just got a contract extension to 2026, and he's getting $1.5 million a year, which some people may think is a lot, but it's nowhere near as much as his coaches are getting. Ryan Day gets $4.5 million a year, and Mike Holtman gets just over $3 million a year. Yeah. So he's a bargain.
All righty, and Karen Kasler, your final thought.
Well, just when you thought the 2020 election was over, we're starting up the Trump rallies apparently again. He spoke to a news quote network that will not be named, and said that he wants to have rallies starting the summer, starting in June in Ohio and Florida, and then North Carolina and Georgia, having another rally around July 4th. So look for that in Ohio at some point in June, that former President Trump will be back to speak to people who want to hear from him.
All right, my final thought, it's never helpful or accurate to compare anything to the Holocaust. This week, State Rep Jennifer Gross filed a bill to bar vaccine mandates on workers, comparing it to things Nazis did. You know what country has people show their vaccine badge? Israel, for leisure activities. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online at wosu.org. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.